All right. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for joining us today here as we launch our petition and website to ground the flight tax in Ontario. I'm joined, of course, by my colleague, tourism critic Laurie Scott, and look forward to giving, of course, you a little insight into the initiative we're announcing today. When the budget was announced, the 148% aviation fuel tax increase, it was just the latest example of how Premier Wynne and her government have no clue on how to build a strong economy or how to create, not lose, more jobs here in the province. In her desperate race to raise more revenue, the Premier put forward this 148% tax increase from 2.7 to 6.7 on aviation fuel without any consideration of its economic consequences. So we want to give those impacted, families and business people paying the tax increased ticket prices, the travel and tourism industry, a voice to ground the flight tax before it's too late. While the tax creep has already begun with the recent 1 cent increase, we're calling on the Liberals to ground the flight tax and immediately conduct an economic impact assessment before fully implementing the tax over the proposed 4-year period. The Liberals continue to refuse to provide the economic analysis behind this, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the impacts of a measure that will create one of the highest air fuel taxes in North America. A Canadian Tax Federation report recently, Failure to Launch, indicates that families could face ticket increases from $20 to $50, all the way up to $200, depending on, of course, their destination. The National Airlines Council of Canada's economic assessment shows 3 million Ontario travelers already crossed the border to fly from U.S. airports because of less fees and taxes. Instead of helping to bring those travelers back to the Canadian skies, the Wynne tax hike will send an estimated 400,000 more people heading to the border exits for cheaper flights abroad or choosing not to fly at all. We've seen the headlines. We know that areas like Buffalo are prepared to take advantage of the increase, putting on a full court press, courting travelers as well as airlines south of the border. Sunwing's move is just really the tip of the iceberg. Given the Wynne government's refusal to read the writing on the wall, we're hoping that people will check the website at groundtheflighttax.com. You can check it on your phones, in fact, right now. Sign the petition and make your voices heard about the impacts on jobs, the economy, and ticket prices this increase could cause. Specifically, the petition asks government to ground the flight tax increases pending meaningful consultation and a full study of their adverse economic impacts before it's too late to reverse the damage to Ontario's economy. We look forward to tabling petitions as they come in and forwarding online petitions to the government to ensure people and businesses impacted will have their voices heard. And so I would now like to turn it over to my colleague, Laurie Scott, who can tell you a bit more about the initiative and the impacts on the tourism industry here in Ontario.
Thank you very much, Michael. We've had the Tourism Industry Association was here at Queen's Park this week and gave us more insights of how they feel that their livelihoods and the growth of tourism is going to be impeded by this tax. The Ontario tourism industry generates 4% of the province's GDP, employs 9% of the total workforce, and represents 17% of the province's businesses. So in the Liberals' desperate race to raise more revenue, the government put forward this 148% tax increase on aviation fuel without any consideration of the economic consequences in the tourism industry. Both MPP Harris and I have questioned the government to no avail on what, if any, economic analysis was done before implementing this tax increase and what the impact would be on the tourism industry as a whole. This website and petition is going to give an opportunity for families, businesses, people, those paying the tax increased ticket prices, a voice to ground the flight tax before it's too late. So in the last 2 weeks, we've heard from the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario, the Greater Toronto Hotel Association have visited Queen's Park, and they've sent that message that the high cost of air travel into Toronto and Ontario is a significant competitive disadvantage for the tourism industry. And this is a significant impediment also to attracting international and U.S. markets, which are the highest spend per day and the greatest growth opportunities we have for tourism across this province. The tax increase creates barriers to growth in the tourism industry and will not only impact airlines and airports, but will impact hotels, restaurants, travel agents, and tour operators as a whole. The bottom line is this tax increase is bad for business here in Ontario. That's why I hope that the Ontarians and travelers who will now pay hundreds of dollars more for flights will visit groundtheflighttax.com and raise their voice on this expensive tax. Thank you very much.
We're happy today to obviously sign the petition first, and we encourage Ontarians to do the same.
Or anybody in the room who'd like to.
Yeah. I know there's some keenly here waiting to sign the petition as well, so.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Be happy to take any questions any of you might have.
The increase here, it's a penny. Is a penny really having that big of an effect so far, in your opinion?
We'll look at when many other provinces in Canada are actually eliminating this fuel tax. Our province of Ontario is going the opposite direction by actually adding this fuel tax. Of course, we heard the Liberals say they wouldn't be increasing taxes on families, but of course one of the first things they did when they got back was to pass the budget that included this punitive tax on families, travelers. We heard the Liberals also say that, hey, $1.1 billion, it's the cost of a cup of coffee a day. A penny will add significantly to the cost, perhaps, down the road after it's implemented after 4 years. It's another tax on families. So absolutely, it will have consequences.
Oil prices worldwide have been taking a pretty big drop lately. So is there a little bit of onus on the airline companies as well to bring down their prices? Like, is it all just on the government? Is that the sole driver here of cost?
Well, look, there's so many pressures. I mean, the airline industry's tight margins as it already is. Clearly, with fuel prices having gone down as of recently, there are some airlines that, in fact, didn't bring the fuel surcharge in when prices went up. I know there's others that will be reviewing that, but at the end of the day, they're now faced in Ontario by this additional tax on fuel. That will further inhibit, airlines from not only setting up in Toronto, but other regional airports, like the one in my community of the region, in the region of Waterloo. We already have flights going to Calgary and BC. There was one recently canceled to Ottawa. We need to encourage more airlines to set up shop in some of these regional airports as an economic boost to our area, and this further, impacts them doing so.
Is that who's going to be hardest hit, or are the smaller airports, not Pearson? It's going to be felt in like the Kitcheners, the Londons, those international airports.
I've certainly heard when they were here the last couple of weeks at the smaller airports, especially London. I think they had a roundtable maybe Tuesday this week, the Chamber of Commerce, about the impact that this may have on their airports, and they're quite concerned, or else they wouldn't really be coming here and saying they're very concerned. So London Airport, Mike, which is more local to you.
Yeah, regional Waterloo, Hamilton. Yep. I mean, when carriers are making decisions as to where to further make investments, Ontario is now going to be at a jurisdiction where, with this new tax, it will be at the bottom of the list, and other communities and other provinces that don't have this will be providing that service for folks, and it's a huge economic factor in communities that are smaller regional markets like London, the region of Waterloo, not just Toronto.
So in your opinion, should the government just go the other way with it completely instead of increasing it? Decrease it or keep it frozen at where it's at?
Yeah, well, like I said, the trend already is that provinces are eliminating this tax. BC just did. We've at least called for the province to do an economic analysis. What information did they use to actually make the decision to proceed with this, knowing that, in fact, other provinces are eliminating it? So we're saying put the pause button on years 2, 3, and 4 until we get some proper information in terms of what that economic impact will be. But at the very least, we should be moving in the direction with our counterparts across Canada and eliminating this tax. knowing the economic benefits by doing so. Increased travelers, more jobs, more investment. We've seen that already in a recent report done by a professor at Schulich. So that information's out there. We just encourage the government to have a look at it.
This was brought up in question period today. The minister simply passed the buck to the federal government. What did you make of that?
Well, that's that's typical of the Liberals, is to blame somebody else. But it was them in this recent budget that added a new tax on fuel for travelers here in the province of Ontario. It was them. The federal government didn't force them to do it. They did it. And so they should stop looking elsewhere and look within first. We've asked for them to perform an economic analysis, or at least provide the one that they've done to justify this increase. So stop blaming the federal government and deal with your own fiscal issues.
What do you say to the government? I think Minister Sousa said today that airlines are actually adding routes and flights in and out of Ontario. What do you have to say about that?
Well, look at, Laurie made a good point. The Buffalo Airport's here attracting carriers, new travelers. We already see 3 million travelers from Ontario travel to the Buffalo Airport to use it annually. We're hearing an additional 400,000 people will travel to Buffalo to use their airport. So yes, Toronto will incrementally grow likely every year, just based on the sheer growth of people coming in. But it's other areas throughout the province, northern communities, flying cargo, and attracting airlines in regional markets that are going to have bigger impacts.
So when we ask the questions, we really don't get an answer from the minister of if he did an economic analysis or not. It's like they saw, aviation fuel tax, let's take that and put it up and maybe no one will notice. So you see the ripple effect, right? So you say it's a penny, but when my tourism stakeholders come in, they say, are we competitive now to attract conventions? We want to attract more conventions. That's going to add to the cost of the convention. They're going to go other places. We see airports, not just Buffalo, but over just in New York State also, and across the border, I think just through Ottawa. I can't remember the name of the airport in the U.S., but they're actually saying, licking their lips, saying, wow, more business for us. And every day, just in general, talking with people, they're like, well, I think it's cheaper to go to Buffalo. It's cheaper to go to the U.S. airports. It's just enough of a difference for us to leave. Thus, they're not going to stay that night in Toronto or in Ottawa. They're not going to stay in our hotels. They're not going to buy
dinner,
our restaurants. So it's an impact that is rippling out from this fuel tax. So we say stop. Let's do an economic analysis and see really if you want to go forward and decrease the amount of jobs on the expansions of airports, the expansions of the tourism industry with us.
The public will always want less taxes, but in reality, there's a lot of other things that make people choose Buffalo. You don't have to be at the airport 3 hours before. You don't have to wait in a massive line to go through customs. You can park at Buffalo for a week in what you would spend in parking at Pearson in like 4 hours. So there's a whole bunch of reasons that people choose to cross the border in their cars and then hop in a plane.
Well, I think the biggest factor is clearly cost. When there's a significant price difference with ticket prices, I think everyone would love to be able to drive closer to home, whether it be GTA or Hamilton or London or Ottawa, and take their family. I know as a father with a couple young children, I don't want them in the van any longer than what I have to. And we've always had good experiences out of Pearson, but at the end of the day, families will make decisions based on primarily financial reasons, and this tax will further hinder families from choosing Toronto or other Ontario airports as an option.
Thank you,
Thanks
everyone,
very much,
for coming
folks.
today.
Yeah.
Thank you.